My name's Jake, and if I ever had even a sliver of doubt about where I stood in my family, it vanished the day I stumbled across the will. Not some big dramatic reveal, mind you. No gather around the table. Boys, we need to talk about the future of the estate speech. No tearful, heartfelt confession from my parents. It wasn't even supposed to be my business. I found out entirely by accident. Sheer dumb luck, or fate with a twisted sense of humor, depending on how you look at it. It happened a few months ago on a pretty normal Saturday. I was at my parents' house, the same one I'd helped keep from collapsing both physically and financially. For the last 5 years, I'd patched that old roof myself, paid down the mortgage when they were short, which was often grocery runs, tax filing, random home repairs, all me. And my brother, Eric. Yeah, Eric was busy being the full-time golden child, part-time professional freeloader. No job, no goals, just endless lounging as if the world owed him relaxation, and my parents owed him their undying worship. So there I was sitting at the dining table, surrounded by half-sorted paperwork. My dad, tech illiterate to his core, had asked me to scan some documents. Bills, insurance policies, pension stuff. Same as always. And as usual, he was watching TV in the living room, like his to-do list had magically vanished once I showed up. That's when I saw it, a slim manila folder tucked into the middle of the stack labeled Estate Plan, Last Will and Testament. Now look, I'm not a snoop. Normally, I'd just scan and file it, like everything else. But something about it made me pause. Maybe it was the weight of the folder. Maybe it was the years of resentment coiled inside me like a spring. Or maybe I just needed to know if all this sacrifice had meant something. So I opened it. At first it was just dry legal jargon, and then I saw the words that made my stomach twist. All assets, property, and savings to be inherited by Eric, last name. Eric. Just Eric. No mention of me. Not a single line. Not even of my eldest son, Jake, who supported us tirelessly. Nope. Just a hollow generic clause about loving both our sons, equally followed by a document that said the opposite in black and white. I blinked, read it again. Then again. The paper started to shake in my hand. Not because of the AC or a draft, but because I was holding it with fingers stiff from disbelief and something that felt dangerously close to rage. After everything I'd done, after all the years I played handyman, accountant, delivery guy, emotional support, son, they were handing everything to Eric, the human couch cushion. I sat back slowly in the chair. My mind was spinning. How long had they planned this? Was it always the plan? Had I just been their walking, talking safety net, while they plotted to gift-wrap their lives to someone who couldn't even remember to take the trash out? I wasn't sure how long I sat there, long enough for my dad to wander back in, remote in hand. "Hey, Jake, what's taking so long?" I looked up at him, then held up the will. Didn't even bother hiding it. "So this is how it is," I asked, voice tight, but eerily calm. "Everything goes to Eric." My dad paused mid-step. His face went pale, just for a second. Then he sighed, like I'd just knocked over a glass of water. "Jake, it's not what you think." "Oh, I said setting the folder down with surgical precision, because it looks like I've been paying your bills while Eric gets the reward. It's complicated." That was it, his grand defense. 2 words as flimsy as the loyalty I thought we shared. "Right," I said, "because screwing over the one kid who's kept your lights on is such a complex concept." Still, I didn't yell. I didn't throw the will across the room. I just needed to hear it from both of them. So I called out Mom. She came in drying her hands on a towel, wearing the expression of a woman who already knew the jig was up. Her eyes landed on the folder, then flicked to me. Guilt, I saw it plain as day. But what she said next: "Jake, honey, you don't need the inheritance. You've got a good job. You're stable. Eric, well, he struggles. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. They were rewarding failure, coddling incompetence, and disguising it as fairness. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not in a dramatic, screaming way, but in a final way. A quiet shift, like a switch flipping. I stood up, set the folder down gently like it might bite. Got it, I said. Glad to know where we stand. Then I walked out. No slamming doors, no parting shots. Just silence. And that silence, it lasted for weeks. No calls, no texts, no we miss you. At first, I think they thought I'd come crawling back, that I'd keep being the good son, the helper, the fixer. They underestimated just how done I was. The first message came 2 weeks later, a text from my dad. Property taxes are due? No. Hello. No apology. Just a demand like I was a utility they forgot to pay. I stared at the screen, laughed a little. Then I typed, I'm sure Eric will handle it, since the house is his and all. And just like that, I stopped being their backup plan. After that text about the property taxes, the floodgates opened. Mom called next. I didn't answer. She followed up with a voicemail, her go-to when she wanted to sound nurturing, but still manipulative. Jakey, sweetheart, we just want to talk. Can't we sit down and figure things out? Like a family. Like a family. That phrase always hit differently now. It used to mean warmth, unity. Sunday, lasagna. Lately, it felt like code for, you pay and don't ask questions. I didn't call back. Then came Eric, of course. He texted bro seriously. You're ghosting them over a will grow up. I stared at the message for a long time. Grow up. That coming from a guy whose most grown-up responsibility in the last decade was deciding which gaming console to beg for on his birthday. I replied, it's not just the will, it's everything. No answer. Not right away. But the next day I woke up to a Facebook post from my mom. That's how I knew we'd moved into the public guilt-tripping stage of their strategy. Sometimes the people you love the most forget where they came from, but parents love unconditionally even when their children turn their backs. Family first. Still of 'em. Tag me. I rubbed my face in disbelief. They weren't just pushing. They were staging a digital pity parade. Comments rolled in. You raised him better than that. Kids these days have no gratitude. He'll come around. He's just lost. Lost, no. I'd never seen things clearer. Still, I stayed silent. Not because I was unsure, but because I knew the second I responded, it would turn into my temper versus their heartbreak. A week later, they called a family meeting. That's how my dad phrased it. In his text, Sunday, 4 p.m. All of us, we need to settle this face-to-face. Settle what I wasn't the one who made this mess. I didn't respond. Sunday at 4:15, my doorbell rang. I opened it, expecting just my parents. Maybe Eric lurking behind them. Wrong. They brought Aunt June, Uncle Rob, and Grandma the whole damn guilt committee. Jake Aunt June began stepping in without waiting for an invitation. Your mother's been a wreck. Hi to you too, I said flatly, backing away from the door. My mom's face was flushed. She clutched a manila folder like it was a life raft. We just want to talk, sweetheart, she said, her voice watery. I sighed. So you brought a tribunal. Don't be dramatic, my dad said, already taking his spot on my couch like he paid rent. Eric, as usual, flopped into the chair nearest the snacks I hadn't even offered them. He brought his own soda. My grandma looked tired. Honestly, she always did. But today, it felt like she'd been dragged into something she didn't fully understand. Can we get to the point? I asked, crossing my arms. Mom blinked like I'd slapped her. We're just trying to understand what's gotten into you. I nearly laughed. What's gotten into me? Dad leaned forward. Look, we know the will upset you, but you need to understand, it wasn't personal. I stared at him. You left me out of your legacy, but it wasn't personal. It was practical, Mom added quickly. Eric, he needs more help. I turned to Eric. Do you? He shrugged. I didn't ask for anything. Exactly. You just expected it. That shut him up for maybe the first time in his life. Aunt June cleared her throat. Honey, sometimes parents make choices to protect their children. Your folks are just trying to make sure everyone is okay. I looked at her. Do they look okay? She blinked. 'Cause I've been the one paying the mortgage, groceries, repairs, and I did it all without asking for thanks. I just thought it meant something. Uncle Rob shifted awkwardly. Grandma stared at the floor. Mom opened the folder. We're revisiting the estate plan, see? She held out a document. I didn't take it. So what, now that I've stopped funding your lives, I get a token spot in the will again? No one said that, Dad said sharply. I raised an eyebrow. But it's true, right? They didn't answer. The silence was louder than anything. My pulse was thudding in my ears. I'd kept it together for this long, but I could feel my grip slipping. Let me ask you all something, he said, scanning the room. If I hadn't found the will, if I hadn't stopped paying, would we be here right now? Would anyone have said anything, or would I just keep getting used until I had nothing left? Eric shifted uncomfortably. We appreciated your help, Mom said. No, I cut her off. You expected it. There's a difference. The room fell still. Grandma finally spoke. Jake, I didn't know about the will, about any of this. Her voice trembled. That's not right. Not after all you've done. I swallowed hard. It wasn't that I needed them to grovel or rewrite their estate plan in my favor. It was about something deeper. Something they didn't even seem to realize they'd broken. Trust? I'm not asking for money. I said quieter. Now I'm asking for respect. For acknowledgement. For some damn honesty. No one answered. Eventually I stood. I think we're done here. Mom's eyes widened. Jake, don't do this. I looked at her. I'm not doing anything. I'm just choosing myself for once. They filed out one by one, defeated but not changed. Even as the door closed behind them, I could still hear the rustle of papers and the sound of Eric opening another soda can, like nothing had happened. I sat on my couch, hands trembling. I'd pushed back, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. It had been a quiet 3 weeks since the family tribunal ambushed my living room. Quiet, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet that buzzed under your skin, like waiting for a storm you know is coming, but still praying will pass. I hadn't spoken to my parents. I hadn't blocked them this time, just didn't answer. I needed space air sanity. Then last Tuesday I got the bank notification. Transfer complete $3,500 memo property tax. Escrow transfer. Dad's name. I froze. That was my account. My savings account. I hadn't made a transfer. I hadn't authorized anything. And I sure as hell hadn't volunteered another dime. My chest tightened. I opened the banking app. There it was, an automatic transfer triggered from an old Link Joint emergency account I'd opened years ago during a rough patch for them. One I'd forgotten about. One I'd never closed because, well, I never imagined they'd steal from me. I called the bank. Confirmed. The transfer wasn't a glitch. Yes. The rep said apologetically they authorized secondary on the account. Your father requested the transfer and met the minimum verification. We're so sorry, Mr. Last name, but legally it's valid. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just a guilt trip. This wasn't just manipulation. They stole from me. I stared at the screen, the numbers confirming it. $3,500. And then the text came. Mom, we're so grateful you finally decided to help again. It means everything. Eric says thank you too. Like I'd offered it. Like I was some long-lost prodigal son returning to fulfill his financial duties. I didn't reply, not immediately. I sat there for hours. Just still. Heartbroken, furious, numb. This wasn't a family misunderstanding anymore. This was betrayal. Cold, calculated, deliberate betrayal. When I finally stood up, I walked straight to my filing cabinet, dug out the original account paperwork, and started pulling receipts. Not for revenge, not for drama, for clarity. I needed to remind myself that this wasn't a one-time thing. It was a pattern. $600 furnace repair. Eric lived there full-time. Wow, $200. Emergency dental bill for Dad. $300. Groceries when Mom forgot her wallet. $2,000. Loaned to Eric. Never repaid. Not even acknowledged $3,500. Just stolen. I added it up. My pen hovered over the total. $7,920. Not including the gas, the hours, the therapy. I never billed them for. And for what? They didn't love me. Not really. They loved what I provided. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I called a lawyer. Not to sue, not yet. I just wanted to understand my options. Close the joint account block access. Create a boundary that couldn't be bulldozed. 2 days later, I had the documents drawn up. Then I made my own plan. I didn't announce it. I didn't warn anyone. I just showed up. Saturday afternoon family. BBQ Eric's 29th birthday. Of course he was having one. My parents had planned it. Just family according to the Facebook invite. I wasn't tagged in, but still saw thanks to a cousin with loose privacy settings. They were using the house I helped pay for. The grill I bought. The new patio furniture. I installed 2 summers ago. I parked across the street. Walked in through the side gate. People were already eating. My parents, uncles, cousins, even Eric's new girlfriend, a woman I'd never met, but who was already sitting comfortably in my old spot. Mom saw me first. Her smile froze. Jake. I kept walking, calm steady. Dad looked up from the grill. Didn't think you were coming. I smiled coldly. Yeah, I figured I'd stop by. See how the house is holding up. Eric stood up already defensive. Look, man, if you're going to make this about the will again. I held up my hand. Relax. I'm not here to talk about the will. I pulled a folder from my coat. I'm here to talk about this. I laid the folder on the patio table right next to the cake. What is this? Dad asked, squinting at the seal. Legal closure, I said. The joint account closed. The stolen funds. Documented. You've got 14 days to repay the $3,500 or I file a claim. Retroactive audit of every unauthorized withdrawal. Also, I pulled my name from the deed assistance registry. You'll need to refinance or sell. I'm done being your invisible cosigner. Dead silence. Eric looked confused. What the hell, man? You're overreacting. No, I cut in. This is me finally reacting. After years. Mom stood up, eyes wide. Jake, please, don't make a scene. Oh, you mean like stealing from me? Posting guilt trips online. Making me the villain in a story you wrote. I turned to Eric. And you didn't just benefit. You endorsed it. You liked the posts. You let them drag my name while you sat on your ass and sipped soda. His face reddened. I didn't steal anything. You didn't stop them either. Dad stepped forward. You're being dramatic. No, I said I'm being decisive. I held up one last envelope. This is a notarized statement, disowning any financial responsibility for this family. I've cut all ties, emotionally, legally. Financially, you chose Eric. You built your future around him. Now live in it. Mom's voice cracked. Jake, please, we're family. I looked at her heart cold and aching. No, I said we were a transaction, and I just canceled the plan. I turned, walked past stunned cousins and half-eaten burgers and left. No one followed me. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just drove home. Free. The next morning, the silence was deafening. No texts, no calls, no furious voicemails from my mom like I half expected. Just radio silence. But by noon, I got the alert. You have been untagged from a post by Mom. Curious, I opened Facebook. Her status read, "Sometimes, no matter how much love you give, some people are just lost to pride. All we can do is pray they find their way back. Thank you to our real family for standing by us during difficult times." Comments flooded in. "You're such strong parents. It's so sad when kids forget who raised them. That's what happens when they get too big for their britches." I didn't respond. I didn't take the bait. But that post was the clearest message they could have sent. I was officially the black sheep now. And weirdly, that realization didn't gut me the way I thought it might. It stung. There's no easy way to read your own mother. Imply you're broken beyond repair. But beneath the sting was relief. Because it meant I didn't have to keep performing. I didn't have to keep pretending. They'd finally stopped pretending too. Still, it hurt. It hurt more than I'd admit out loud. For a while, I just sat on my couch, staring at nothing. I didn't even bother turning on the TV. I kept thinking of all the times I dropped everything to help them. Fixing that leaking pipe at midnight. Covering Eric's overdraft fees because he forgot his PIN. Driving an hour to pick up Dad from the mechanics when his car broke down and still paying for half the repair. Had any of it ever meant anything to them? Or had I just been useful? That evening, my cousin Leah messaged me. "Hey, just wanted to say I saw what happened. You're not crazy, if anything. You've been way too patient. Let me know if you ever want to talk." I nearly cried. Not because it fixed anything, but because someone saw me. Someone who wasn't pretending I was ungrateful for setting boundaries. I typed back, "Thanks. I think I really needed to hear that today." Then I got up and did something that felt small but enormous. I packed up the spare key I still had to my parents' house, slid it into an envelope, and dropped it off at the post office. No note. Just a quiet return of a door that was never truly open to me. Afterward, I walked to the coffee shop 2 blocks down. My phone stayed in my pocket. No doom scrolling, no anxiety checking. Just me, a hot cup of dark roast, and the sound of other people living their lives. It felt good, bittersweet, but good. Later that week, I did get one call from Eric. I let it go to voicemail. "Look, man, I didn't know Mom and Dad took that money, I swear, but you didn't have to go nuclear at my party. You embarrassed everyone. I get that you're mad, but airing it all out like that. Kinda low. I'm just saying, maybe think about apologizing." Apologizing. I stared at the screen and laughed. Not bitterly, just in disbelief. Even now, he thought I owed them something. I blocked his number. The next weekend, I had brunch with my friend Nate. He'd heard bits and pieces, but this time, I laid it all out. The will, the stolen money, the BBQ showdown. He sat in stunned silence for a minute before shaking his head. "Dude," he said, you were being used, right?" "I do now," I replied. "I guess I just didn't want to believe it." "You still gonna talk to them?" I sipped my coffee slowly. "Maybe one day, but only if they change. Not just the money, the mindset." He nodded. "You're not wrong, but damn must be lonely." I looked out the window. It is, but it's lonelier, pretending they care when they don't. That afternoon, I started looking at weekend getaways. Just a short trip somewhere quiet. I hadn't taken a break in years. My PTO always got spent helping them move furniture or house sitting for their cats. This time the trip would be mine. No guilt, no obligations, just a suitcase and silence. I won't lie. Part of me still aches sometimes. I'll be in a store, see something I know my mom would like, and instinctively reach for my phone before remembering we're not speaking. Other times, I'll lie awake wondering what would have happened if I'd just shut up, if I'd just kept paying, kept quiet, kept pretending. But then I remember how it felt to open my bank account and find my money missing. How it felt to see my name erased from a future I helped build. How it felt to realize love in that house had always been conditional. Now the only condition I have is respect. If they want to rebuild from here, it'll be on my terms. If not, Then this story ends with me finally free. It's been 9 months since the barbecue. 9 months since I stood in front of my family, handed them legal paperwork, and finally said no. Not maybe. Now let me think about it. Just no. I won't lie to you, the months that followed weren't some blissful montage of sunsets and inspirational quotes. Real healing. It's quieter than that, Messio, but also deeper. The kind of peace that comes from finally choosing yourself, even when it hurts. The first big change I moved. Not far, just 20 minutes away, but far enough that I didn't have to see their grocery store or accidentally bump into one of Eric's ex-girlfriends at the gas station. I found a one-bedroom loft with creaky floors and way too much natural light. The kind of place that would have made my mom say, "It's cute, but are you sure it's safe?" I was, for the first time in years, I was sure of something. I painted the walls, bought furniture I actually liked, started sleeping better, not because I had more money or a better mattress, just fewer ghosts. I also started dating someone, Ava. We met through a friend, the way good things often happen when you're not looking. She's smart, emotionally fluent, and refreshingly direct. On our second date, I told her the entire story about my family. I half expected her to recoil. Instead, she said, "That must have been hell. I'm proud of you for walking away." No judgment, no pity, just validation. She gets it. She gets me. One of the best moments of the past year came in spring. Ava and I had been talking about taking a trip. Something simple, just a reset. One night we were scrolling flights and she asked, "Why don't we go to Greece?" I laughed. "Do I look like a man who travels to Greece?" She smirked. "No, but you look like a man who needs to." So we did. And let me tell you, there's something wildly cathartic about standing on the edge of the Aegean Sea, salty wind in your face, knowing your bank account hasn't been drained by a surprise transfer from your mother. We ate fresh olives and laughed until midnight. I took photos not to post, just to remember. It was the first time in years I felt present. No guilt, no family drama hanging over my head. Just me and Ava, and the sound of waves that didn't ask for anything. A few weeks ago I got a letter. Real paper-stamped envelope. My mom's handwriting. I stared at it for hours before opening it. "Jake, I don't know if this will reach you or if you'll even read it, but I want to say that I'm sorry. We were wrong. I see that now. I wish I could undo what we did. I wish we'd appreciated you when we had the chance. We've been trying to fix things, but it's not the same. Eric's struggling. We thought giving him everything would protect him, but we might have crippled him instead. I miss you every day, not for what you gave us, but for who you are. Love, Mom." It was the first time she'd admitted it. Not just "we love you" or "we didn't mean to hurt you," but real ownership. I didn't cry. I didn't write back. But I didn't throw it away either. Some wounds don't heal on cue. They need time boundaries, space. And sometimes, even then, they don't close all the way. But they stop bleeding. These days, my life is quieter. I still check my bank accounts, a little obsessively. Old habits die hard. I still flinch when I hear certain words. Family inheritance obligation. But I'm no longer afraid of them, because I know who I am without them now. I've started mentoring at a local nonprofit that helps young adults transition out of toxic homes. We teach budgeting, job skills, boundaries. Things I wish someone had taught me earlier. It's weird, but standing in a room with a whiteboard and a few folding chairs, telling someone they're allowed to walk away from what hurts, it feels like coming full circle. Ava and I are thinking about getting a dog, or maybe moving in together. She jokes that she's waiting for me to stop keeping my socks in neat rows like some trauma-sorted soldier. I joke that she better love me and my color-coded spice rack. We're good. I'm good. If you'd told me a year ago that cutting off my family would lead to this kind of peace, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have said, "But they raised me. But they're still my parents. But what if I regret it?" And now I know better. Because family isn't just about blood, it's about respect, safety, reciprocity. I learned that love without respect isn't love. It's manipulation in a prettier dress. I learned that walking away doesn't mean you're cruel. It means you're finally listening to the voice in your head that says you matter too. And maybe most importantly, I learned that I'm allowed to choose myself. If my parents ever want a real relationship again, the door's not locked. But it's not swinging wide open either. They'll have to knock. And this time I get to decide if I answer. Until then, I'm busy building a life that doesn't require their approval. And for the first time in forever, that life actually feels like mine. Story 2. I stood in the kitchen apron stained with grease, the smell of grilled meat and burnt bread clinging to my skin like a thin veil of smoke. Outside cheerful music blasted from the Bluetooth speaker, blending with the chatter of nearly 30 guests raising glasses to celebrate my parents' 35th wedding anniversary. A big party lights strung from the oak trees, flower arrangements on every table, laughter floating through the suburban Charleston backyard. And me, Christina, 33, the eldest daughter running everything behind the scenes. I had set up the tent before sunrise, hauled every chair, grilled every burger. The family party machine. Lisa, my younger sister, lounged by the pool, cocktail in hand. Our youngest sibling, Jack, laughed with the kids. No one offered help. No one even noticed the sweat soaking my shirt. By sunset, the garden glowed golden. My father, Robert, stood and gently tapped his spoon on a glass. The crowd quieted. My mother. Margaret beamed at his side. We have something special to share. Dad said next week the whole family is going on vacation to the Florida Keys. A 7-day trip. Blue water, white sand, and a yacht party. Cheers erupted. Lisa screamed and hugged her husband. Jack cheered. Mom nodded with glowing pride. For a moment I smiled. Maybe this would be my turn to rest. I walked over, wiping my hands. When are we leaving? I'll need to adjust my work schedule. Sudden silence. Dad frowned. You don't need to know you're not part of us. I froze. Mom scoffed and turned away, chatting with an aunt. The noise resumed, but I couldn't hear any of it. I stood still, stunned. I had cooked, cleaned, sacrificed. I stayed home when Dad had a stroke. Bought him a truck. Planned Lisa's wedding. Now I was an afterthought, an outsider. I slipped away numb and found myself on the porch gripping my purse. The heat wasn't what weighed on me. It was the years of loyalty suddenly crushed under one sentence. Lisa followed. Christina, are you okay? I didn't answer. I walked to the garage, keys in hand. Each step felt like letting go. Back in my Savannah apartment, small but spotless, I sank into my armchair and stared at the dark sky. My father's words echoed. You're not part of us. That night I didn't sleep. I went through old keepsakes, photos, cards, reminders. I once mattered. By 3:00 a.m., I pulled out a suitcase and packed essentials. My camera journal, $1, $200, I'd saved over years. I opened Google Maps Clearwater, Florida, a name I once read about a coastal city with soft white sands. I booked a one-way bus ticket for 6:00 a.m. I locked my apartment door while dawn still hovered. At the Greyhound station, I sat quietly with a vending machine coffee. The bus arrived, I climbed aboard, chose a window seat, and watched the streets of Savannah fade. I didn't know what Clearwater would bring, but for the first time, I wasn't running. I was choosing. I arrived in Clearwater by noon. The air was thick and warm, the sun hanging high, like it had nowhere else to be. The bus station was small. A bench, a vending machine. No grand welcome, just space and sun, and the quiet buzz of somewhere new. I found a small room above a local bar called Theo's. It wasn't fancy. A single bed, an old desk, and a window that faced the back parking lot. But it was mine. Theo, the owner, didn't ask many questions. Week up front, he said, handing me the key. No trouble, and we're good. I unpacked, slowly setting my camera on the desk, my journal beside it. That night I lay awake listening to the muffled sound of laughter and clinking glasses from below. It didn't bother me. It reminded me the world kept moving. I was just learning how to move with it. The next morning I walked along the beach barefoot. The sand was warm, the breeze salty. I let it mess up my hair. Let it touch parts of me I had forgotten needed air. On a corner near the harbor, I stepped into a small cafe called Misty Beans. The sign was hand-painted, the chairs chipped. It felt real. Behind the counter stood a woman with a pixie cut and gray eyes. She looked me up and down. "We're short on staff," she said. "You know, espresso." "Not yet," I answered, honest. She handed me an apron. "Then learn fast, I'm Brooke." And just like that, I had a job. Brooke was sharp, blunt, but not mean. She moved like someone who didn't waste time, who didn't pretend. At the end of my shift, she left a muffin on the counter for me. Said nothing, just walked away. That was her way of caring. The regulars at Misty Beans were a mix of dock workers, local musicians, old women who never finished their tea. I learned their names, slowly listened more than I spoke. It was enough. One afternoon, I found a dusty old camera in the back of a thrift store. A Canon AE1. Same model I used to own in high school, before I sold it to help pay the electric bill. The man at the counter said it still worked. Needs film, that's all. I bought it. That night I loaded a roll of film and sat on the back steps behind the bar. I took pictures of tree shadows of the moon between two buildings, of a couple holding hands beneath a street lamp. It wasn't perfect, but it felt good, like a piece of me was still intact. Brooke saw me snapping shots. "Didn't peg you for a shutterbug," she said. "I used to be." She nodded, like that explained everything. Weeks passed. I worked mornings, took photos in the evening. I started sleeping better, smiling without effort. One night after my shift, Brooke told me about a photography class at the community center. Julian's teaching. She said, "He's good. You should go." I went. The room was filled with soft light folding chairs and photos taped to the walls. Julian was in his 40s, calm voice, messy hair. He looked at my camera and smiled. "Classic," he said. "You shoot before." "A long time ago." "Then it's the perfect time to start again." He gave us an assignment. Photograph something you can't forget. The next morning I walked to the beach and stood beneath the old pier. Light filtered through the wood in streaks. I raised the camera and pressed the shutter. The photo didn't just capture the pier. It captured me standing in the gap between where I came from and where I was going. After that, something shifted. I started developing the photos, watching images. Form slowly like pieces of memory returning. With every frame, I brought them to class. Julian stopped in front of the pier shot and tapped the edge gently. He said, "This is your beginning." He encouraged me to keep going, so I did. Each week I brought new photos. A stray dog sleeping under a diner table. An old woman folding laundry by a window. Brooke laughing with a tray of mugs in her hands. Each photo felt like a story only I could see. And finally, I wasn't afraid to tell it. One night, Julian mentioned a local gallery. They're curating a community exhibit. He said theme is "Me and the Pieces I Carry." "You should submit." I hesitated. "Do you think I'm ready?" "You were ready the moment you left Savannah." I submitted 5 photos under the title Roots and Wings. The first was the pier. The last was a close-up of Brooke's hand resting on a coffee cup. Between them were glimpses of my new life solitude, strength, stillness. When the exhibit opened, I stood in the back corner and watched strangers look at my photos. Some nodded quietly. One woman wiped her eye and turned to me. "Did you take this?" she asked. "Yes." She smiled. "Thank you. I see myself in this." I didn't say anything, just smiled back. That night, walking back to my room, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Not a loud, showy kind, just the soft peace that comes from knowing I chose my own path, and it didn't need anyone else's approval. A few days later, I got an email from the gallery. One of my prints had sold. The peer, a collector from New Orleans, $200. It wasn't about the money. It was the proof that what I carried had value. Brooke bought me coffee the next morning. "Told you," she said, "people need what you see." I nodded. I think I needed it too. The past was still there. Still tender, but it no longer controlled me. I had left the place that taught me to disappear, and in doing so, I had made myself visible again. This is the story of how I walked away, and how step by step I became whole. And if you're reading this, wondering if you're allowed to do the same, yes, you are. Start where you are. Choose yourself, then keep walking. The light will find you. Story 3. I'm not his daughter anymore. That much became clear the moment I saw the name tag. I was at my father's birthday party held at his wife's over-the-top mansion. Chandeliers, violin quartet, hors d'oeuvres, with ingredients I couldn't pronounce. It was the kind of party where people say, "Darling," and pretend they like each other. There on the reception table near the front door was a stack of name tags for guests. I spotted mine right away. Rachel, family disappointment. I stood there frozen. The cheap plastic tag felt heavier than it should have. Laughter floated in from the bar, and I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. My father's wife, Cynthia, the queen of passive aggression and backhanded compliments. Her smirk was practically audible. I placed the name tag back on the table. Not gently, but not with a scene either. That's what she wanted. A scene I'd learned long ago, that if I reacted, I'd prove her point. I took a deep breath and moved into the party. The room was full of polished smiles and tight handshakes. My father Richard stood in the center like a politician, shaking hands and laughing at jokes that weren't funny. Next to him were Cynthia's children, Brandon and Lily, the prodigies, the heirs, the real family. My father spotted me, and for a fraction of a second, our eyes met. Then he looked away. I grabbed a drink and stood quietly in the corner. I didn't belong here. I hadn't for years. But it wasn't always like this. When I was little, he was everything to me. We played catch in the yard. He read to me at night. I was his world, or so I believed. Then my mom died, and everything changed. He married Cynthia when I was 11. At first, I tried to make it work. Cynthia was polite, but never warm. Her kids got the best of everything, and I got used to leftovers. As time passed, my father started missing things, school meetings, birthdays, promises, but he never missed a game of Brandon's or a recital of Lily's. I still remember standing outside school in the rain, waiting for him. He never showed. When I got home soaked, he barely looked up from the couch. "You're old enough to get home on your own." He said I was 12. Eventually, I stopped asking for his time. At 18, I applied to college. My mom had left me a fund. I was going to use it to finally get out. But when tuition time came, the money was gone. "Brandon needed it," my dad said, like it was obvious. "You'll figure something out. You always do." I left home that night with a duffel bag and $200. I didn't speak to him again for years. I waited tables, took night classes. Eventually, I built a freelance design business. Nothing flashy but mine. I never asked for help. Not again. Now here I was, back under his roof, wearing a dress I bought secondhand and pretending like the name tag didn't cut deep. Rachel Longtime, Cynthia cooed, stepping toward me, wine glass in hand. Her eyes did a quick scan from my heels to my hair. "Cynthia," I said flatly. "Still doing that. What is it? Graphic doodling?" She smiled. "Well, it's good. You're staying creative." I gave her a tight smile. "And you still running charity galas that mysteriously fund your daughter's modeling career." She blinked, and for a moment the smile cracked. Then she laughed. "Oh, Rachel, still sharp-tongued, I see." "Still pretending to be kind, I see," I replied. I walked away before she could answer. Across the room, Brandon was telling a group of guests how Dad had helped him land a job at a Fortune 500 company. Lily was showing off her new engagement ring, and my father was glowing. When he finally came over to me, it was like an obligation. "Didn't expect to see you," he said. "Believe me, the feeling's mutual." "Still bitter?" he asked, sipping his drink. "Still pretending you did nothing wrong," I countered. He sighed. "Rachel, you always overreact. And you always underparent." He didn't respond, just gave me a dismissive nod and drifted back into the crowd. I stood there alone again in a house that used to be mine. And that's when I realized something. They weren't embarrassed of me. They wanted me to be embarrassed of myself. That name tag, the digs, the indifference. It was all to remind me that I was an outsider. But I wasn't ashamed. Not anymore. I'd built a life from scratch. No handouts, no family name to open doors. Just grit. And suddenly that made me proud. So I walked back to the reception desk, picked up the name tag again, and this time I kept it a souvenir. Because it was the last time they'd ever call me that. 3 weeks after the party, a letter came in the mail. Not a text, not a call, a formal invitation to my stepsister Lily's wedding. It was embossed in gold, sealed in wax, and signed with my father's name. It didn't mention what happened at his birthday. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a time, a place, and a dress code. I almost threw it out, but something inside me wanted to go. Not for them, for me. I rented a dress, not too flashy, but elegant enough to command attention. Did my hair in soft waves, put on heels that clicked with confidence. When I arrived at the venue, all marble pillars and fresh orchids, I could already feel the tension in the air. I walked in, head high. Cynthia looked up and froze. Brandon blinked. Lily tried to smile and failed. And my father, he looked at me like he had seen a ghost. I greeted them like strangers. The ceremony was beautiful. The vows were sweet, but I watched it all with a distant calm. At the reception, I found a seat near the back. I didn't mingle. I didn't make a scene. Until Cynthia came over. "You're here," she said, as if stating a fact. "Clearly. You didn't have to come, you know. Neither did you, but here we are." She gave me that practiced smile. Always so defensive. I leaned forward. Always so fake. My father stepped in before it escalated. "Rachel, can we talk?" I followed him to a quiet corner. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Because I wanted to prove something to myself, that I could face all of you and feel nothing." He looked tired, older. "You know, I never meant to hurt you." I met his eyes. "That might be true, but you did." He looked away. "You were always strong." "That doesn't mean I didn't bleed." We stood in silence. Then I said the one thing I needed to say. "You chose them over me every time, and I won't let it break me any more. But don't expect me to pretend like none of it mattered." He didn't argue. I left early that night, walked out without goodbyes, and on the way home, I felt light, like I had finally let go of the version of myself who still waited for him to change. It's been nearly a year. No letters, no birthday cards, no calls. At first, the silence felt heavy. Then it started to feel like freedom. I moved to a small coastal town, rented a 1-bedroom with creaky floors and a view of the ocean. I started painting again, opened a little shop online. Nothing glamorous, but honest. Some mornings I walked barefoot on the shore, watching the waves smooth over the same sand again and again. It reminds me that healing doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like getting up, making coffee, and choosing not to let the past steer the day. One afternoon, while sipping tea on the porch, I saw a letter in my mailbox. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. It was from him, my father. It wasn't long, just a note. I was wrong about a lot of things. I hope you're okay. I miss you. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer and left it there. I didn't need to respond. The silence wasn't out of hatred anymore. It was clarity. Some people spend their lives chasing approval. Others spend theirs giving it away. I used to be both. Now I only seek peace. And some nights when the wind carries the salt of the sea into my open windows, I sleep like I haven't in years, because I know who I am. Not the disappointment, not the shadow, just Rachel, enough as I am.